What I have in front of me, this is Invu Capture, or you should probably see at the top there, Abby Flexi Capture. First of all, you can scan the document straight in, so this can be attached to a scanner. Go and put a pile of documents on the scanner and fire them in, and one by one they all start appearing in here. It can watch a folder, like anybody who uses Invu Link Manager. Invu Link Manager can watch a folder and import documents. This can do exactly the same thing. If I've got a document, I can actually just drag it in and drop it into the system, and it'll save it automatically as well. Now you see that's actually doing some work on that document. There's something going on in the background. And what it's trying to do, and something that typically happens automatically, and I'm going to do for all of these documents, the system will try and recognize the documents that I'm dropping in. Now what a recognize means is it's trying to find out if it knows what the document is. The system can be used for various things. We're using it in this scenario for invoicing. You can do it for application forms. Basically any process where you receive documents of a common type, the system can be used for that. And what the system is doing, you'll see this thing starting to highlight up there that say export and verification. It's had a look at the invoice to identify the information on that document. And if I just sort these between verification and export, and I'll show you one that's ready for export. If I double click, oh, same document, good random choice. What's actually happened is the system has gone to this document and tried to identify the information that I require. In this case, I'm looking for invoice header type information, and it's gone and identified the company that it belongs to, because it can run in a multi-company environment. So I identified the company I'm working with, and it's actually found the supplier. Now this is looking off at my Sage 200 database that I've got on the system. So it's looked at my supplier list on Sage and said, do I recognize this supplier? It's actually done that by looking for this information. So it said, I found the VAT number, therefore I know who the supplier is. If it didn't find a VAT number, it'll say, well, let's look for the postcode, try and find the supplier. Let's look for the fax number. And you can find various ways of identifying the information. You'll see on this document, it's actually found the invoice number. And what it's done, and previously with this type of technology, people have used just templates to do this. So you would get a supplier invoice, you'd scan it in, say, well, my supplier's invoice looks like this. And then next week when he changes the supplier invoice to look like something else, it no longer works and you've got to come and redo it again. It doesn't actually use that. What it's doing is looking for words on the document. So I'm looking for the words invoice number or invoice no or invoice code, wherever it may be, and then I'm looking for invoice date and order number, so on and so forth. And it's actually trying to find that information in that way. For that reason, it can be used on a myriad of invoices and find the information automatically. You'll also see at the bottom, there's a warning set up, and this is saying, I've recently processed this document or something similar to this document. This is saying to me, are you sure you want to continue? This is a warning. You can make that an error in that you would have to either change the document or just delete it from here because you've processed this document before. So you could put kind of warnings and things to that effect on. The system will also do VAT calculations for you. So this is checking that the VAT figures are right. You could put things like tolerances in, make sure it's within £1 or within a couple of pounds, and then still let it continue. If it was different, I do have the ability to override and say, well, I just want it to carry on anyway. They go back to my main page. There are certain things I need to deal with as verification. And if I double click one of these documents, what this is saying, there's something missing or something wrong with this document. And if I click on the rule, it's saying to me, for some reason, the VAT or VAT net and gross calculation is wrong. But what should happen in this scenario is we should delete the invoice and ask for another one. But I do have the ability to come in and just type over that field. Now it's happy with that information. So all your invoice capture, which is previously open up the finance system, go to invoicing, type it all into the system, that's gone. This system is doing that for you. Once the job's done, anything that is marked for export can carry on to the next stage. Now export can mean various things to various organizations. In my case, export means I'm going to take this document, drop the image into Invu, copy all these references I've extracted and save those as document reference on the Invu database. So there's no more identify, click on file and save, pick out all the fields, look on one screen for one bit of information, type it into the other, all that's done for you. The next thing it's doing is it's sending the information into a database ready for Sage to import, Sage in my case, but whatever finance system you're using, it's going to sit that in a table waiting for that information to become complete. Complete in my case is, and the next step for an export is going to start a workflow process. So it's going to say somebody needs to do something else with this document, and I require them to do some coding on it. Now everything I did there can actually happen automatically. If you place the reliance on your system that you think, I'm quite happy that this has got all the information correctly, you can scan the documents in, it'll recognize them, see they're all correct, and export them. So everything you see as export on this screen can go automatically. So the user's actually not had to do any capture whatsoever. It just disappears off the screen. So the next step in this process is that the document, and you may have actually noticed an email popping up at the bottom of the screen. And this is telling me I've actually got a task to view. So you can send an email with the link that you need to follow. And if I press this link and it's telling me I need to do something with it. Now in this case it's asking me to code the invoice. And what we've got on the screen is the document, obviously. We've had a look at it. Now anybody worth the salt would say, well, I actually want to reject that because that's nonsense, the invoice is wrong. We can't claim the VAT on it anyway because the invoice is incorrect. So I could reject it outright, write a note or pick from a list of error reasons, and that would end that flow of that document, maybe send it back to finance and lecture them in some way, but I'm actually not going to reject that one. We'll carry on in the process. First of all, it sent this document to me, I'm logged in as demo, as a user on the system. If this wasn't for me, I have the ability to send it off to someone else. So I could send it on to someone else because it's for them to authorize. When all I would need to do was click forward, action it, and that would go to that next user. But in this case, I think I'll carry on, and in this case it's legal fees, something to that effect. If I click on the drop-down list now we're looking back into my finance database again, and it's presented me with all the general ledger codes or nominal codes, whatever you want to call them. And these, in my case, are specifically just for me. So I can narrow down the codes based on the user capturing in the system. So any rules you set up either in the Invu system or that you set up in your finance system can be followed in here. And I could, if I wanted to, just type in, if I knew how to type, legal fees, and it'll take me to the correct place straight away. Or I can browse the codes if I wanted to. I'm doing this at one coding level. If you've got cost center, department, account code, I think you can have something like up to 6 layers of hierarchy on here. So if you want to code in that manner, you can do so as well. And it will filter down the codes based on your selections. In my case, I'm just posting straight through to an account code. Now, if I took a part of that code and said, this is actually a little bit of legal, and enter, you'll see it says remaining 422.50. And all I can still do is forward or reject it. And the reason why it's doing this, if you have an invoice that needs coding by several people, you could actually come along and choose who the next coder is and just send the invoice on, and then they're responsible for 422.50. And that would need to be changed. But what I'm going to do is actually just pop in here and change that to 822.50. Enter on there. And that's now nothing remaining, so now it's fully coded. And I'm going to accept the transaction and send it on its way. That's my job done. The next step for my process in here is to go and have a look at what's going on in Sage. Now, for any Sage users there, you'll obviously be familiar with this, but it's pretty much like most ERP systems we come across. They're not that dissimilar, and they do things in similar ways. And what I'm going to do here is just select to capture an invoice. Now typically in the old-fashioned way, I'd have all my invoices lined up either in a pile, or I've got images on Invu of them on a secondary screen, and I'll come in and pick my supplier and go and enter all the information, that fun job that accounts payable people love. But if I click on the Post from Invu button, I've now got these two invoices that I've said I want to capture, and all the information is done for me. So this gives me an opportunity to have a look at the information, make sure I'm happy where it's coding. If I've got the ability, maybe change that coding if it's an accounts payable role. I could delete it if I wanted to, or remove it from the workflow. But it's an easy job just to select those two items and say, post them away. And it's complete, and I've got nothing else to do. What I'll do next is a supplier transaction inquiry. And I think one of them is active rehabilitation. I've actually got a similar invoice done before. And I'll show you a little bit about the Sage integration that we're running on the system. Now you'll see there's some items highlighted in blue. I've got highlighted links to different parts of the Invu system. Now these links can be created very specifically or to be quite broad. If I was to select the account reference, it's actually going to look for everything I've got for that supplier. So if in this case, I've got multiple invoices sitting there, if I've got contracts and schedules or wherever it may be, I'd see all of those documents in the system. Further down, we have a reference as well, and that, clicking on there, will look for the reference. So if I click on reference there, it's going to find I've got the same reference on the two documents, but a quick double click, and we're going to open the document in Invu. Well, that's a PDF, so it's opened up in my PDF viewer, but I get to see that document straight away. So I've gone from capture to coding to authorized to in my Sage system and looking at the documents in a very short space of time on the system. If I actually go and look for that document in Invu as well, if I've got to try and remember this code, what are we? 34537. So if I went to my Invu Search screen and look for 34537, do a search. If I right click on this document and choose properties, for anybody that hasn't seen this before, I can see a full action of what's happened to that document. So I know it's been in the workflow and I know it's been accepted and coded. So I now know that it's done all the trail you want it to do. And that's just a quick simple search. Okay, so we've done quite a lot of Sage bit. And one final thing to show you, and my favorite thunder because I do a little bit of reporting on the side. Here we have a report that was created for one of our customers. But this is running off the Invu workflow process. And we've created a report, and the object of this report was the customer wanted to know where all the invoices were at any one time and why they were being held up. You'll see we've got what department has got the invoices, what are the different statuses that orders are in the process, how many are captured, how many are approved, and it's just KPI style reporting, and we can do this on anything that processes through the workflow. The big culprit as to who was holding up the delays happened to be the directors in this case. Not that that's uncommon at all, so we can all empathise with that one, I think. But I think that's taken you from the start of an invoice capture to what you can get out at the end of it. If anybody wants to see me after the show that's finished today, you're welcome to come and have a chat, and we can show you what else we can do with this as well. Thank you.